Peter was succeeding me in the United States as Slovak ambassador to the United States before served on NATO and security for whole life. Second speaker on the list is Jirko Schneider, the first deputy foreign ministry of the Czech Republic, and also, I would say here, a president in the chair of Visegrad 4 group. Jirko, warm welcome to you. The third is the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs of Hungary, Zsolt Nemet. Zsolt been in this business also forever, almost forever. And I have a very biasing moment to remember that in '99, when we got a freshly elected new government, we changed the history of Slovakia. My first trip was to Hungary. Usually we do first trip to Czech Republic. My first trip was to Hungary. Everybody at that time was doubting whether Hungary will support, for those little petty jealousies we have in between for the last 900 years, whether you will support Slovakia. And the first thing which Zsolt did was that he opened the room, invited about 50 journalists in the room and said, we are going to support Slovakia. So I'm biased for that brilliant memory. And with Boguslav Vinit, who is Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs for Security Issues in Poland. Boguslav, I'm so privileged. We spent a lot of time in Washington together. We did a lot of good things. It's very nice to have you here. Before I give the floor to Peter to start his comments, we will have a couple of seconds video. As the video ends up, Peter, the floor is yours. Thank you. If video works. Do we have video or not?
It's going.
All right. So we are in the mood set by pictures from Prague to Chicago. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rastio. And first of all, I would like to welcome my colleagues from Visegrad 4 countries. And actually, as Rastio mentioned, I'm most junior among the state secretaries of Visegrad 4 countries. And it's really has been only 24 hours since I arrived actually yesterday from Washington and started my business. And really, this is a great coincidence and great opportunity to start this communication with my Visegrad 4 countries on a future cooperation within NATO, within European Union, how to strengthen not only our regional security, but also security of the alliance as such. And it's almost incredible that it has been already 10 years, and I remember clearly our excellent moments when we are sitting in Prague behind this kind of table and we listened to the speeches and our invitation was presented to us to start the negotiations on accession. And I really believe that 10 years it's a good opportunity to look back a little bit and evaluate our performance and also the impact of the enlargement and admission of new members on the alliance and on our regional security. And I would say really 10 years from Prague, it has been an extraordinary decade. And regardless of the problems, shortcomings and other issues, the NATO has clearly demonstrated its ability to adjust to new conditions and realities. And NATO has also demonstrated that the alliance has a lot to offer to both newer and older members. And I believe really enlargement was an important tool for strengthening the alliance, not weakening it as somebody or some voices were saying. And again, I remember before both waves of enlargement, in 1999 and 2004, there were voices saying, you know, that our presence in NATO, I mean, the presence of new member, will weaken the alliance. It will especially prolong the discussions. It will complicate the decision-making process. And some ambassadors were joking, I think Sandy was among them, that they do not have enough big table to host those traditional lunches. And of course, there were also quite serious voices and serious concerns expressed that our presence in NATO will actually also deteriorate the relationship with Russia and actually weaken the security of the whole transatlantic area. But I believe those voices were totally wrong. I would say our presence in the alliance has strengthened the alliance. Our presence in the alliance has strengthened our regional security and enabled us to concentrate on real problems, the real issues of transformation. Second, the enlargement and the whole integration process taught us, I mean, Visegrad 4 countries, to work together and cooperate regionally among each other and support each other's ambitions for being a NATO and EU member. And I really think this was a crucial moment also for Slovakia when we are falling behind, and the rest of the Visegrad has supported our ambition to join the alliance as soon as we, let's say, addressed our deficiencies of democracy. Now we are members of the alliance, and I would say also militarily, our contribution was not so negligent or not so small. And clearly we have participated in most important NATO operations, KFOR, also ISAF. Currently, Visegrad 4 is contributing 4,000 troops, and I think it's really a significant contribution for Slovakia. 350 troops posted and deployed in Afghanistan. It's really a very significant commitment with also serious financial implications. But what is even more important, our people support these deployments, and there is no political party or no major political party who would oppose this deployment. So it's showing really a maturity on our political scene in terms of approaches to security. And also, the deployment in Afghanistan has helped us to improve our capabilities. Let's say our capabilities in the area of demining and also disposal of the improvised devices killing both military and civilians, were able to contribute to saving hundreds of lives among civilians and also NATO troops. And I believe really we are also moving in terms of our contribution to higher level, to more sophisticated way of contributing, and also to really combat troops, which is quite important for us because before mostly we are considered as providers of technical services. But currently, just last year, we have sent out our special forces for the first time. They are helping Afghan National Army to train and to be prepared for the transfer of responsibilities to Afghans. So in total, I would say really our contribution and our performance can be evaluated positively. That we have also our problems, it's true. And I believe really one of them and the biggest problem is the lack of finances for really implementing what we have committed to. I mean, various programs of transformation of military forces had to be adjusted, namely because of the lack of finances. And I understand really the reality and the situation of the financial crisis. And at the same time, security is not coming for cheap, really. And you would really feel the consequences of disregarding or neglecting this area when something would happen in our region. So I guess when the financial situation in the European Union will improve, we have to really seriously look to our commitment to come back to 2%. And of course, it will be coming gradually, but at least we need to have a clear statement of a political will to do so as soon as we can. So this is one thing. Second is actually the issue which was mentioned by our Prime Minister, and I do not want to repeat what he was saying. He was mentioning the regional cooperation among the Visegrad Four in addressing some of our gaps in our military capabilities. And really, when you look to possibilities to save money, I think pooling and sharing and using our individual capacities and capabilities for joint trainings or using our facilities for maintenance, I would believe really would save a lot of money. But also we have to look into procurement. And there, of course, we cannot afford to buy expensive military aircraft alone. We cannot buy some other military equipment by our own, and we need it to be really able to contribute even better. That's why this kind of pooling and sharing would mean really, again, addressing the current financial shortcomings and difficulties in a better and more efficient way. So I do not want to talk too long about our contributions, our problems. I want to also say a few remarks on our expectations from Chicago. And what was really very important, as I mentioned in the beginning, that the alliance was always able to adjust to realities and new conditions. So I really believe that the highest priority of NATO is also looking to the issues which we have to adjust to, and also to threats we have to be prepared. Second, we need to really complete the operation in Afghanistan. And third, really appreciate our partners and look how we can work more efficiently with them. And what was mentioned also by our Prime Minister, we do not want to and we do not have to forget about those countries seeking the membership in the alliance. And we need to strongly support their ambitions and send a clear message that as soon as NATO is prepared, we will open the doors again. And as soon as they are especially prepared, they will be invited to start the accession talks, because this is the only motivation, but also this is an important factor for strengthening the regional stability. And again, here, Visegrad 4 are ready to work with our future allies and pass the experience from our transformation processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, for this introduction. I'll now turn to Jirko Schneider, not only on behalf of the Czech Republic, but you got on your shoulders the responsibility and burden of the presidency until summertime, and then I think it's passed to Boguslav. So, Jirko, it's very nice to have you here.
Thank you, Rastio. It's my pleasure to be here, and congratulations to next year of Globsec, which is becoming more and more visible and significant. First of all, in the capacity of Visegrad, let me underline what was between lines and sometimes explicitly in the opening speech of the Prime Minister. I think V4 has become a valued format on various levels. First of all, this is a format for regional cooperation. And it's very important, and there is internal value in it as we discover year by year. It has a value inside European Union for promoting some of the interests we share. Of course, we are coming more realistic. We do not share all the interests, but there are some interests we share, and let me mention especially the area of energy and energy security. We share a lot of interests in external policies of Europe. And I just stress the Western Balkans and what the Prime Minister Fico said. Let me just mention that beyond high-level meetings and visible symbolical acts, what is needed is a hard work on a working level. There's much to be done. And I'm happy that parallel to Globsec and parallel to presence of some statesmen from Western Balkans, there is also a working level meeting of Visegrad with Balkan countries working on some practical issues and including Visegrad Fund. I wish we could continue in that. Eastern Partnership was mentioned, and of course Visegrad countries are those who are very keen to keep Eastern Partnership alive and delivering. And of course, last but not least, there has been a lot of deliberation and speculation. What is the added value of our countries who have a long-lasting experience from transition against the backdrop of the dynamic development in Arab world? And of course, there are some panels in this conference which will be on this point. Finally, NATO. We are working closely together in NATO, and one of the results will be that next week, the meeting of the Ministers of Defense and Foreign Affairs, we will present jointly our position on the road to Chicago under the notion of responsibility for a strong NATO. I hope that the change of tone from letter to Obama administration to this message will be visible. And I think we have done some incredible steps in recent years. From Prague to Chicago, let me say that I have vivid memories of Prague. And it was a very, very important moment. It was basically a farewell party of President Havel. And it was just a couple of months ago he passed away. I think that was his contribution to NATO. And he was quite happy that such a big group of countries could have been invited in Prague. So message of Prague is enlargement, and let's keep door open. But also, it shouldn't be forgotten that in Prague we started transformation. And the package called Prague Capabilities Commitments was adapted. And so we started all these deliberations which led to this advanced state of NATO transformation. I think when we recollect what happened since in the last 10 years, we shouldn't forget about other summits. Let me mention Istanbul summit, and I would say unfulfilled aspirations which were actually drafted into the Istanbul Commitment Initiative, which is, I think, still in the air, and especially when we talk about the broader Middle East, I think we should keep this in mind. Bucharest, enlargement, I mentioned already, shouldn't be forgotten. But also Lisbon. I think we finished a very intense work on doctrine. And I think it's been tested, and we built on it, and I think it was a very good work. In Chicago, hence, we'll focus on NATO as an effective and credible security and defense provider in age of austerity and various challenges. So, of course, capabilities, but also commitment in Afghanistan, even beyond 2014. Now, implicitly, by having a summit in Chicago, there will be this big topic of changing U.S. role and presence in Europe, which has been widely discussed, and also the contribution of Europeans to the common burden. And so into this, I think our message that Visegrad would like to be an island of cooperation, one of the islands of regional cooperation in NATO, will be an important message. Let me finally refer to the tonight's panel when we'll debate in detail the joint Visegrad project we venture in, and our think tanks were part of that, drawing some lessons and recommendations how to improve our defense capabilities in age of austerity. I think we shouldn't have too much ambition. We should have a realistic level of ambition in that, and we should be very frank in answering the question why we so far haven't been so successful. But then I think there are some promising areas where we can really do something in pooling and sharing. My final point is it shouldn't be an excuse to cut the budgets. Pooling and sharing is an instrument how to use money better, but not to use it as an excuse for others who would like to take away money from security and defense. This is not a time to decrease our spending in this area. We are not living in the safe and beautiful world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jirko, very much for this splash of sobriety here. And now turn floor to our Hungarian colleague. Floor is yours, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me with this straight stuff on my, okay. Congratulations to your government. First of all, we are just right after a few days of the formation of the new Slovak government. I would like to congratulate to everybody, including the Deputy Foreign Minister. We are hoping that there will be a strong government, and that strong government will be a strong partner for our common aims and goals we have just started to discuss in the past 1 hour. Also, I would like to express my congratulations to the Globsec. This is a very nice and very successful initiative. We are very glad that Visegrad can host such an event, and we believe that the kind of meetings we tend to get together with more or less of the participants. Last time I saw many of you in Wrocław, but we tend to meet quite often, and we are very glad that we can get together. The more, the better we can clarify our opinions. when I rushed through the program and rushed through the participants, I'm sure you all did before coming here, either on the aeroplane or you were preparing for this event. And I don't know what struck you, but one thing what struck me was that this is a genuine Central European gathering, and I am very glad to see so many Central European participants, and the transatlantic guests are obviously also very visible, but these transatlantic guests are the ones who are able to make the difference between Slovakia, Slovenia, and Slavonia. So in the United States, it's not so easy to identify those people who can differentiate these three. But we are very glad that you are following the developments in our region, and we really rely on you. So from Prague to Chicago and beyond, first of all, I would like to underline that we are committed, very much committed, to a strong NATO, and we believe that this next coming summit is going to strengthen the solidarity inside the alliance. And there has been a lot of aspects mentioned before me. I'd like to mention only three aspects of this expectation of mine, how the strengthening of NATO can take place from my perspective. First, I would like to underline the importance of Central Europe and Visegrad. Not just the participant and not just the subjects we are discussing at the Globsec now in Bratislava, but the reality, the political reality of Central Europe and the region requires reflection. For example, four of us here, we are four deputy foreign ministers from four countries, the so-called Visegrad cooperation. And we start to speak about what we expect from Chicago. And we are the starting event of Globsec. We are very privileged that we can play this role, but I'd like to reflect on that this is not an accident. The first supporter of this event is Visegrad Fund. If you look at the banner behind me. I wonder how many of you know what's Visegrad Fund. But Visegrad Fund is very important to us. It not just finances Globsec, but it finances with relatively huge amount of money fantastic initiatives influencing the life of the Visegrad countries and our close neighborhood, Eastern Partnership countries, the Western Balkans, and so on. It is the only institutional aspect of the Visegrad cooperation. But Central Europe is not only Visegrad. What is Central Europe? Central Europe is a region which is between the, it's difficult to give a clear definition, we will probably speak about this aspect, but still, if you want to give a vague definition that what is for us Central Europe, we would say that this is a region between the Russian-speaking and the German-speaking Europe. And we don't like when we are called Eastern Europe. You Americans may have experienced sometimes that we use Eastern Europe for something else that exists as well, but we use the term Central Europe for ourselves. And we believe that this region has a lot of characteristics, has a lot of interests, has a lot of values, and it has very many growing number of similar a similar mindset. And we are very glad that our partners in the region, I mean the partners of the Visegrad countries, are there as well in the Baltics, or we are very glad that Igor Luksic, the Montenegrin Prime Minister, is also with us at this conference, because we believe that the Balkans, the Western Balkans, is also very closely tied to this region. We have a broad understanding of Central Europe. And when we talk about the similarities, the similar mindset of this region, it is very important to identify that the foreign policy orientation of this region is fundamentally alike. We may have debates among us. We may have international, interstate debates. But one thing seems to be pretty sure, that this region has a very similar view on our foreign policy orientation. This region is an Atlanticist region. The kind of domestic debates that you have got, for example, even in Germany, not to speak about France, does not characterize this region. This region has an overwhelming Atlanticist approach. When we are talking about the future of Europe, we are discussing fundamental reform questions, the future of the monetary union, and so on. We are talking about the future vision of Europe. And we are involved not only just into this Atlanticist commitment, but we are also pro-European. And for example, unlike the British, for us it is not a problem to harmonize between our Atlantic commitment and our European commitment. We are able to view in full harmony these two kinds of attachments. And I believe that for the future vision of Europe, it is not at all secondary if Central Europe is going to be able to influence the European views on the value of Atlanticism and on our relationship, the European relationship to the United States. So I believe that if there is an asset for the Atlantic solidarity, number one asset we should identify much more clearly, and what we should exploit in the future much more, is Central Europe. To strengthen Central Europe, to help the Central Europeans to strengthen their identity and their influence on Europe in general. This is point number one. Point number two, I'd like to draw your attention to is the Western Balkans. The Western Balkans, ladies and gentlemen, is an unfinished business. An unfinished business of the transatlantic community. We have sacrificed lives, we have sacrificed huge amount of resources, but I'd like to draw your attention that this region is still an unfinished business. This region will not benefit on the short run, unfortunately, from the solidarity of the European Union because of the well-known enlargement fatigue inside the European Union. NATO has shown solidarity through inviting Albania and Croatia into the alliance, wanted to invite Macedonia, but for very obvious reasons, Macedonia couldn't become a full member. But what I'd like to draw your attention to, that this region, the Western Balkan regions, and this is a Central European message, and the Central European aspect we would like to draw our Atlantic partners' attention to, this region requires very much our attention. NATO is going to be able to give stability and future to the region before the European Union. And God knows if it was a legitimate decision to identify Chicago as a summit of no enlargement, or no enlargement summit, and we are talking about this, I think we should try to concentrate how to avoid the negative impact of suggesting that this is a no enlargement summit. And let us try to explain to Macedonia or Montenegro, it's not an accident why the Montenegrin Prime Minister is with us today. Let us try to explain to them that what our offer is to them and how we foresee their integration into NATO. And I'd like to subscribe to what was said before me by the Prime Minister, but let's hope that by the next summit, these two countries minimum, Montenegro and Macedonia, can become full member of the alliance. And this is not just the interest of these countries, but the interest of the region, the Western Balkan region. It is the interest of the credibility of the alliance, and I believe that is a way to strengthen the alliance fundamentally. And number three, what I'd like to draw your attention to, this issue, like the issue of Central Europe, like the issue of the Western Balkans, is also on the agenda of the program of Globsec. That's energy. Energy. New type of security challenges are coming up. We have just been able to reflect on the cyber issue, and I'm very glad to see that the cyber will have a very important platform on this Globsec. And in the autumn, Hungary is going to organize the next cyber conference in the beginning of October. I'd like to invite everybody to that event. New type of security challenges, among them I'd like to draw your attention to energy. Energy is a way of a new type of vulnerability for Central Europe, and not just Central Europe, but for the whole of Europe. If we take into consideration what's happening with the nuclear issue in Germany and in Western Europe in general, how it will have a secondary effect on the danger of Russian monopolistic domination on Central Europe and on Europe in general, we should take much more seriously energy than we do. Until now, we have talked quite much about Nabucco, the Southern Corridor. There are large volumes of libraries filled with this issue, but it is also an unfinished business. Unfinished business like the Western Balkans. And the Central European wisdom, what we are trying to explain to our friends and partners, that the prime solution, a very important component of the solution, is Southern Corridor. Nabucco or Southeast European pipeline or whatever you like it to call, but Southern Corridor. And is it the interest of Russia or not? It's a big question. On the short term, certainly not, and they seem to be pretty sensitive on this subject. But I have a different notion. I believe that fundamentally it is a Russian interest to save them from their monopolistic temptation to pressurize Central Europe and Europe, and to allow them to exercise their wealth and their ability through market instruments. And this is our job. It is the job of the transatlantic community, of all those people who are involved into security matters. So these are the three issues I'd like to draw your attention to. Central European region in general, with Visegrad in it, are important asset for the strengthening of the alliance. To have an open mind towards the Western Balkans and to finish the business there, and similarly energy, to pay a very strong attention to the issue of energy. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Now the last comments by Boguslav. I'm not going to ask you who you love more, whether Weimar 3 or Visegrad 4, because I'm selfishly pretending that it's Visegrad 4, and you've been playing this part extremely responsibly. So you have the concluding remarks, and I'll turn to the floor for the questions.
Thank you very much, Rastislav. When you were introducing us, I thought that, well, this is kind of a Veterans Association meeting. You know, for all of us, actually, this is not only 10 years. I remember glory days with Peter. We were serving in 1990s together when we were joining the alliance, and that was really good fight. I mean, you know, kind of a nostalgia. But does it mean that work is done? Can we go and have some good Czech or Slovak or Hungarian beer or wine? Definitely not. And when we look at Prague summit, Iji mentioned Prague capabilities commitment. Well, it sounds familiar to our new job. We have a new initiative then to create NATO response force, for example. We introduce new capabilities against chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats. Moreover, 2002, there was idea that we will coordinate with the European Capabilities Action Plan. Ladies and gentlemen, sounds familiar? Well, we have a lot things to continue, a lot of things to go. This was introduction of transition. So, you know, from current perspective, we can say that NATO was in kind of a process of permanent transition. But in this process of permanent transition, we have all this operation in the Balkans, Kosovo, Bosnia-Herzegovina. We have a gigantic effort in Afghanistan. We introduced 9 new countries since Prague summit. So there are very concrete and very important achievements, but also new challenges and new questions. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that we did a very good job in Lisbon when we adopted new strategic concept. But in this strategic concept in Lisbon, we defined 3 core tasks for NATO: collective defense, crisis management, and cooperative security. And now the task for us for Chicago is to define how we will build the muscles, cut fat and build the muscle. This is Rasmussen's idea. I think it's a very, very wise one. Well, we may differ in threat assessments. We may differ in approaches for these 3 areas. But one thing which unites us is the agreement that we need to have adequate capabilities. And of course, as my colleagues mentioned, we are living in the time when we have financial crisis, when unfortunately some of our leaders have strange ideas to cut defense budgets. And this is very difficult time for us, especially, not only for us in Visegrad, not only for us in NATO, for us in the kind of a transatlantic area, when we look at our neighbors to the south, to the east, to the west, to some extent also, when their defense budgets are actually growing. Well, you know, something which is close to Poland or something which is in the NATO near abroad. We have some powers who do not have any problems actually to develop the new S-400 rocket systems or develop new armaments, new programs, new modernization programs in the coming years for more than $7 billion US. So we have to work very carefully, internally also for us in NATO, to work gradually to achieve this 2% GDP on defense and 20% of this GDP, of this defense budget going for modernization. Let me highlight the new development. Our colleagues in Estonia, in a very difficult financial moment, they adopted a new legislation when they will spend 2% on defense. This is a model for us which we should follow. We look at Chicago to find kind of answers, how to create this momentum to increase our defense capabilities and actually to turn the clock with these cuts in defense budget. So defense budget capabilities is one, and then is how we will divide these resources. And there are very different options how to do that. One of the key documents which will be adopted in Chicago is Defense and Deterrence Posture Review. And our colleagues in NATO are right now working on these documents. There's a hobby among NATO ambassadors to reach a consensus very last night before the summit, and this will happen this time. But let me give you our views, how we would like to see balance in this document. We look at defense and deterrence posture review as a mechanism actually to fulfill new strategic concept. So, as I mentioned, we would like to see and create some equilibrium to make us all feel secure. So first, this kind of a balance which is needed is approach to new challenges versus acknowledge of traditional threats. And by new challenges, we mean, of course, cyber defense, energy security, counterterrorism. But please don't forget that there are still these traditional threats which we are facing. The second important problem is conventional forces versus nuclear deterrence. Conventional deterrence, nuclear deterrence. This is a subject as long as NATO. So we are quite certain that we will reach a consensus over here. And the last important balance, which we have to find a consensus, is the definition within or how we will build conventional forces. So collective defense capabilities versus capabilities for out-of-the-area operations. Some of us can argue that there are very similar capabilities. Well, our perspective, for example, from Afghanistan is quite opposite. There are different capabilities you need for the deserts in Afghanistan and different capabilities to have deterrence posture, let's say, in the high north, just to mention climate. So we need a good balance here, and we believe that we have good political guidance in NATO. Now there is a task for our military colleagues actually to build and to create the military documents, planning documents, review documents, which will closely reflect the political balance which we have right now in NATO. And there is still some work to be done, but again, this is in the NATO process. We will reach a consensus here, but this is important task for all of us before Chicago. We are trying to do our job, and this is also thanks to the legislation which we adopted in 2001, even before Prague, that 1.95% of our GDP will go for defense. And since thanks God, our GDP is growing, our defense budget is also growing. We have, of course, important debate how we will spend this money, in what capabilities we will invest. And here I would like to agree with my colleagues that smart defense is one of the key elements of our cooperation. But of course, smart defense and close relations to pooling and sharing EU initiative is essential. But this is not everything. We have to have this bone which we can build all these capabilities all around. Maybe one very good point for all of us is the helicopter initiative, which all of our countries are involved, and this is very good model for the future. Also, the strategic transportation system, not far away from here in Papa. This is very good examples how we coordinate and how we fulfill the obligations coming from our membership in NATO. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, we need more resources. We have to spend these resources wiser, and we have to keep a good balance in our definition of the role of the North Atlantic Alliance, and of course with full cooperation with the European Union. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Boguslav. This was an optimistic outlay. Some people look at things a little more gloomy. So let me turn to the audience and see the hands. I'm semi-blinded by this, so maybe I'll use my hand as a shield to look at you. To cast, and maybe we got time for one round of questions and quick responses from the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, who can I pass the floor for the first question? If you will be lazy to ask, I'll have to ask. So don't make me. Well, I earn no money. I wanted to say earn money on this. Let me earn my chairmanship time here. You are extremely efficient speakers. I see no hands raised. Let me turn that back because I'll have a couple of questions. Peter, in your...
There is one question there. The lady is raising her hand.
Please, if there is the hand, which I don't see because I'm blind, please stand up and pose the question. Please, go ahead. Here is the hand. I apologize. Yes. Can we get the microphone here?
I'm Marina Pekeshkina from Ukraine. You several times said that Western Balkans was the business of Visegrad Group as a part of Central Europe. By the way, the center of Europe is in Ukraine. What do you think about the situation in Ukraine now?
All right, that is a good question. Have I overlooked a hand? If I overlooked, just stand up. If I overlooked the hand, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Do you allow a short remark, not a question?
Please, but keep remark.
Okay, thank you very much. I represent a country, actually, which is NATO abroad, that you mentioned several times, namely Russia. I'm Dmitry Suslov from Moscow. You mentioned several times the new NATO strategic concept adopted in Lisbon, which is a great document. And I would remind you that one of the key points of the document was the declaration of NATO strategic partnership with Russia. And thank you also for explaining what strategic partnership in your eyes definitely mean, because the message I got from your presentation is that the strategic partnership is counterbalancing against Russian defense policies that are not in any case targeted against European NATO countries. You know, I got an impression that actually I'm in Moscow nowadays because the Russian officials usually, the spirit of the statements that many Russian defense officials say is absolutely the same, that they try to fight the non-existent threats. Discussing missile defense and so on and so forth. You know, when Americans are planning European phase adaptive approach, Russian people from the Ministry of Defense and General Staff immediately say, this is against us, you know, and let's try to counterbalance and keep the parity and so on and so forth. I got the same spirit here when you talk about Russia's S-400 or possibly S-500. Since the year 2015, you say, oh, this is against us. I mean, forgetting about such a factor of the Russian defense planning as China, you know, and so on and so forth. It seems to me that strategic partnership in your eyes is also trying to fight the Russian energy dominance in Central Europe. I don't understand why. Actually, do you think that Russia is really threatening Germany and Italy or some other consumers of the Russian energy? And is it really wise in the time of European hardships, when we both actually anticipate hardships and when we both decline in the global in the global arena against the new powers? Including China, is it really wise to concentrate on counterbalancing between each other rather than going beyond this mutually deterrent strategy and mutually counterbalancing strategy and maybe unite forces in security, in energy, in the human field? It will make both Europe and Russia stronger, I think, in the global context. Otherwise, if we will continue this old, really farcical strategy of counterbalancing ourselves in the time of global turmoil, we will continue to become weaker, indispensable of all the summit decisions. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you for the comment, which serves as also a very good question to the floor. Gentlemen, I think we can have for all four of you about 8 to 9 minutes. So I'll ask you for swift responses to those two questions and anything which you want to react in between you, maybe in the same order. Peter.
Very briefly on Ukraine, I think both NATO and EU express clear attitude towards Ukraine, and let's say, willingness to work with Ukraine to integrate Ukraine to both NATO and Ukraine. And of course, it's Ukraine which needs to make a final choice whether it wants to and with which organization to integrate. We would love to have Ukraine in both organizations because we believe it would be good for Ukraine, it would be good for regional stability. It wouldn't be directed against Russia. This is very clear about any enlargement. But again, Ukraine needs to think very seriously about the rules, especially in the European Union, when it wants to come closer. And once again, we would welcome Ukraine much closer than it's the current situation. And of course, some phenomena on the Ukrainian political scene are not very much compatible with the, let's say, ambition to integrate closer with European Union, speaking very, very softly. Counterbalancing Russia, I don't think really this is the attitude within NATO. And again, NATO expressed very clearly an interest to work with Russia in addressing common threats and to be a partner for NATO in working together in those areas like missile defense against threats of ballistic missiles coming from, let's say, Iran and so on. And I think there is this will really to have much more constructive dialogue and cooperation, but we need to have two partners for that. And I do not want to really put only blame on Russia. We need to make our thinking about Russia clearer and specify really the areas where we want to have Russia on board. And again, NATO is open for much closer cooperation with Russia.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Yes, on Ukraine and on Russia, the joint point is, I think we have to work with the expressed will of the countries, and we have to respect the expressed will of the countries. So far, I'm quite confused about what's the will of Ukraine expressed through its leadership, and I'm confused also about the Russian interest vis-à-vis NATO, quite frankly. We have done our homework. I'm speaking for Czechs. We have got rid of all the resentments against Russians stemming from '68 and later on. I'm not sure Russia has done its homework vis-à-vis NATO. I haven't heard anybody speaking about counterbalancing Russia. Nobody of us was. There was a point of admiration, I would say, Bogusz said, that Russia can afford rising budget on defense. So you make us our homework harder. And I think nobody of tens of thousands Russians living permanently in Czech Republic, and especially in my hometown of Karlovy Vary, I think thinks that this is a hostile country, a member of a hostile alliance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Phil.
Concerning the Ukraine, we look at the Ukraine as part of Central Europe. It is very important for us. Visegrad countries pay a lot of attention to strengthening the sovereignty of the Ukraine. The Ukraine, a sovereign, strong Ukraine, is the cornerstone of the transatlantic stability. And we rely on those political forces who are committed to strengthening the democratic and sovereign character of the Ukraine. And with multiple means we are working in favor of this. So the Eastern Partnership V4 program targets very explicitly the Ukraine, also Belarus and Moldova and the Caucasian countries, but the Ukraine is a prime target country for our efforts. We see your future, the Ukrainian future in Europe. As the member of the European Union, we are the only country group which makes it very clear that the Eastern Partnership, as actually Robert Fico said, cannot be a substitution for full European Union membership, but a step towards the European integration. So our commitment is strong there, but here is true, NATO is a bit more sensitive issue, and we accept the Ukrainian government approach. Until there is no clear signal, I think we should exploit the existing frameworks, the NATO-Russia Council and so on, the NATO-Ukraine Council and so on. So the field of security should be the field of cooperation as well. Concerning Russia, I would like to underline that we are, I feel sorry that the new leadership is not going to exploit the possibility to participate at the Chicago summit. Probably there might be some reasons for that. We don't expect major shift after the re-election of Mr. Putin as the president of Russia. We think that the kind of relationship we have witnessed in the past years will continue. That's what we expect. But similarly to what Mr. Schneider said, we have to identify those fields where we agree and those fields where we don't agree, and we have to be as frank as in diplomacy it's possible with each other. So obviously in the field of Afghanistan, our cooperation is important and successful. In the field of anti-terrorist activity also, there is a pretty good cooperation. In the field of missile defense, we have divergent views. It may have something to do to the decision that Mr. Putin is not going to participate in Chicago. But we are firm what we think about the missile defense. So we are open to cooperation. Parallel structures are welcome, but the kind of sectorial approach which is coming up from Russia, that certain allies should be protected by the Russian system, is not possible. For us, the protection of the alliance is the task of the alliance. In that field, we cannot make any compromise, so it is a red line for us, and the same goes for the issue of energy. Obviously, we have to rely on each other, but we would like to move towards more and more the market means, market structures, mechanisms in our energy relationship, and to minimize the role of monopolistic approaches which might endanger the smooth market relations between Europe and Russia. So I think there is a broad field for intensifying our cooperation, but we need to be frank with each other. We need to express clearly our interests, our approaches, but in general, I'd like to express again that I don't expect major shift in the relationship between Russia and Europe and the alliance in general. Thank you.
Well, actually, we have S-300. We are the only NATO, I think, country which owns S-300. And tell you frankly, I would not mind if I was in charge of defense. I would want S-400 as the piece of Slovak equipment. I'm not jealous about that. Boguslav, what's your take? And that's a concluding remarks.
Yeah, I understand I have about 30 seconds according to your timetable.
Not going to shoot you down S-300.
No, so let me just say that I agree with comments by previous speakers, which is kind of normal in Visegrad. And let me just say that as far as I know geography, maybe I'm mistaken, but as far as I know geography, Kaliningrad is quite to Polish border, not to Chinese border. Thank you very much.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, not to deprive you of the break, please applaud and thank to this panel. There is 20 minutes coffee break, and the first session will start, which is titled European Economic Integration, Saving Europe Union from Itself, chaired by Peter Spiegel.